The Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show is sponsored by Accunet Mortgage, an equal housing lender, NMLS ID 255368, and Accunet Realty Advisors, which is a separate company from but still affiliated with Accunet Mortgage.
Putting a roof over your head without the headache. Get answers to all of your home buying questions. This is the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
And our Sunday best to you. Good morning and welcome to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show. I'm Steve Kettler, along with Accunet Mortgage Managing Owner and Senior Vice President Jerry Circadich and licensed millennial loan consultant David Wickert. As always, if you have a question or a comment, you can reach us directly by calling 414-799-1620 on the Accunet Mortgage Talk and Text line. Good morning, Jerry. Good to see you, and good morning, David.
Good morning, Steve. We got to get our own intro section there, Jerry. Too much credit to the old man. We got to get one for you and me.
That's right.
Anyway, good morning, Steve. Jerry, what's on the docket for this morning?
All right, David. Yeah, great to be back after a couple of weeks. Steve, good to be with you again. We've got
always a pleasure.
Yeah, it is. We're going to have a good time here for the next hour.
You bet.
We've got a lot to talk about, as always. We're going to start out with some highlights on the economy, that which affects mortgage rates, of course. A lot happening, even though it was a slower economic week. The president's pro-growth policies are starting to...
Maybe not highlights, lowlights.
Lowlights, yeah. So we're going to cover that a little bit. We've got prospective homeowners saying buying a home is stressful. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. 6 things nobody tells you, Steve, about buying a house. We've got a lot to cover there.
You bet.
David, I think we've got maybe a couple to add to that 6.
Yeah, you bet.
So we've got that. A few other things. We got the rate roundup at the near the bottom of the hour, as always, and hopefully some folks out there who might have a question about buying a home, selling a home, refinancing a home. We'd love to hear from you.
All good. What's the state of the world out there, Jerry?
All right, so let's kick off here with the economy. That generally stocks, David, have performed really well since the election.
Yeah.
I think we've all seen the Dow just going up and up and up. Bonds, as it relates to interest rates, the treasuries have suffered.
Yeah.
We saw a little bit of a reversal of that this past week.
Amazingly,
even on the heels of another Fed increase the week prior.
Yeah.
So in large part, this is because Wall Street investors are growing more and more concerned that the pro-growth policies that Trump campaigned on and was elected on, deregulation, healthcare reform, looks like he's going to get a lot more pushback and a lot more trouble getting those through. That has proved to hurt stocks and move money back into
bonds
and treasuries.
So anybody who claims they know what's going to happen or what's going on is lying.
No doubt.
Right.
No doubt. So yeah, that is, nobody was predicting that. But here we go. So there's a good news. Rates have dipped a bit. We'll cover that in the rate roundup. So it's good news.
Well, mortgage rates, because, I think even as Dad says on radio spots, hey, your HELOC last week, because the Fed raised rates, that's going up. And the whatever the rate is on your credit card, that's going up too.
That's right. No relief there.
Right.
No relief there. And so the bottom line, as we always say, good news for the economy can be bad news for rates. Well,
yes.
This is kind of, we reverse that. And so we'll be watching that. We'll have a lot to talk about, I'm sure, on that next week to see how Washington reacts to the failure of this, the health care reform. So the housing sector data, this is the other piece of the economy we want to talk about, David. Housing sector data last week revealed that sales activity remained very strong. New homes sold in February rose to the best level in months.
Nice.
Sales of previously owned homes did dip a bit, from January's strong pace. In large part, I think something we're going to talk about, David, is the really low inventory of homes for sale is hurting that.
There was an article, friend of the show, friend of Accunet, Paul Gores over at the Journal, had an article that's online right now just talking about thin inventory. And, the specific example in the article is talking about Wauwatosa. Hey, listed a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, something or another for $290, and in short order, they had 5 offers at a sold price of $315. So when inventory is that tight, you got to be the most attractive version of yourself as a buyer as you can possibly be. Have that mortgage side of things lined up, because anybody who thinks that they're going to go and write an offer and be the only one writing is incorrect. It's going to be you and one or two other folks who are competing for good homes. And it's just talking about inventory. Jerry, I was saying my sister lives in Wauwatosa, and part of the problem is, hey, if they sold their home, yeah, maybe they might get a premium price for that house, but the other half of that question is, well, where are they going to go live? And so that's part of what's driving inventory to such low levels is, yeah, you could sell your house for a nice price, but where are you going to go live after you sell? All right, when we come back from this next break, Jerry and I, we're gonna introduce you to stress-free mortgage, because too many folks are stressed out about buying a house. The guys at Accunet, we're going to introduce you to stress-free mortgage when we come back from this first break.
And if you have a question for Jerry or for David, you can reach us on the Accunet Talk and Text line. That number is 414-799-1620.
Home buying advice from the guys who know it best. This is the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
Well, the Brewers are about a week away from the first pitch of their 2017 season. And as the rebuild continues, what will success look like this season? A 500 record? Maybe a Ryan Braun trade? Greg Matzik opens up the discussion on Sports Central tomorrow night at 6:30. We are visiting here on the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with David Wickert and also Jerry Serkatich as we now transition into a stress-free mortgage process that you can enjoy.
Important, Steve, that we cover this. Coming out of the last segment, talking about the low inventory and competing offers that buyers are having to deal with. As one real estate agent in that Journal Sentinel article mentioned, you put a property on the market, and literally within hours, you'll have 15 to 25 showings scheduled. And that's translating into multiple offers within hours as well in most cases.
So stress-inducing. Honey, we got to go see this house now. There's 24 other people who want to maybe buy this house.
Yeah, no doubt. So there was an article we came across. Prospective homeowners say buying a home is stressful. We're going to cover the three greatest fears that buyers have and some of the other interesting things that this survey found, and talk about how we at Accunet try to reduce those stressors and make it a stress-free process.
Yes.
Today's competitive real estate market, we just talked about, no wonder that buyers are experiencing high levels of stress. Home can be buying a home can be a stressful process anyway. And in an environment like this, we found that this article found that 10 potential home buyers, or 7 in 10, I'm sorry. So 70% of home buyers are spending an average of 1 to 3 hours a day, their day, looking at homes either online, on the ground with their agent.
Wow.
That is a lot of time.
It's okay if you spend the time, right? It just, maybe it can feel fruitless if you're doing all that research and there aren't enough nice homes to go look at.
Well, true. Although
this is a house you're buying. This isn't like you're buying your next pair of jeans. Like you should maybe spend a little time, even if it is stressful, looking for that good house.
Right. It is. It is consuming. It's a consuming process, no question. And the three greatest fears. Let's get to these and then talk about how we can help abate these.
Yes.
The three greatest fears expressed. I'll take the first one here, David. Was fear of losing earnest money deposit. 64% of those respondents said they were concerned or afraid of losing that earnest money deposit, and it's a lot of money for most people. You're putting up $1,000, $2,000, in some cases even more, that you could stand to lose if you wind
something
up
goes sideways.
Exactly.
Number 2 was becoming house poor. And I think the way I say this when talking to folks on the phone is there might be a number that I can approve you for. Hey, you could go buy a $400,000 house just based on the math that we have to do in the mortgage world, but maybe you only want to go buy a $250,000 house. That keeps you in the I'm not strapped from month to month making my mortgage payment.
Right. That's where we talk about that payment target.
Yes.
That's not so much how much can you afford, but what's the payment target you want to be at or below. So very important, and that leads into the third greatest fear, experiencing a bidding war, which would drive up the price of the house.
Yeah.
Again, almost 6 out of 10 concerned about that. Not surprisingly, based on these low inventory numbers we're just talking about. And that kind of leads into the concern about, boy, am I going to wind up spending more than I feel I can afford, or am I going to wind up paying more for the house than it may be worth?
That might especially be true if you don't think you're going to be in the house long enough. If you're putting 3% down on a house, and you kind of had to not overpay, that's not the right word. Value is value. It's what you're willing to pay for the house. But shoot, maybe if you get a job transfer, you might not recoup what you spent to buy that house in a short period of time. So, I understand how that can be stressful, but maybe you got to go into it thinking like, we're going to live here.
That's something we're going to talk about here in one of the next segments, too. As you think about buying a home and whether or not it's the right thing for you or the right time, that's a big piece of that. So, David?
Yeah, when we come back from this next break, Steve, we're going to talk about, we say at Accunet Mortgage, nobody goes to mortgage class in high school or college. So we're going to give you the 6 things nobody tells you about buying a house when we come back.
Right here on the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on 620 WTMJ.
Getting you into the home of your dreams. Here's more of the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
4-2 road trip has the Bucks climbing the playoff ladder in the Eastern Conference. What can be expected from them during the final stretch of the season? Justin Garcia dissects their remaining schedule during Wisconsin Sports Weekend coming up at 12:07 this afternoon right here on WTMJ. We are in the midst of the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Hour with Jerry Serkatich in for Brian Wickert, David Wickert with us as well. And we're now up to 6 things that nobody tells you about when buying a house.
Yeah, you bet. And I just I got a text message from partner in crime, Sarah Wiesman, over at SJW Realty and Lakefront Title. She said she's showing a house this afternoon, $330 purchase price with 5 offers. So in case you thought inventory is thin, yes, that is correct. So here's things you need to know about buying a house because, again, nobody goes to mortgage class in high school or college. So thing number 1, face the paperwork first. So we get to ask just a couple interesting questions in the mortgage world to start to put that blueprint together to make sure we got a good game plan. Hey, how's about we start to put that plan together before you're in the emotional, perhaps stress-inducing house hunt so that we've at least got those oddball questions like, hey, do you report any Schedule C or K-1 income on your federal tax returns? Yes or no? Okay, no, great, excellent. Let's get that paperwork stuff out of the way. That's thing number 1. Jerry, thing number 2.
Well, number 2 is this was USA Today Online. Had this. Number 2 they had is find a hidden gem, and I think everybody wants to find a deal, right?
Of course,
that's
the art of the deal.
Human nature. This is interesting. It said, of course, proceed with caution. Nothing's ever as good as it seems.
Right.
So don't let these made-for-TV renovation shows fool you into believing that these house redos are easy, cheap, or speedy.
Right. Remodel in 10 minutes.
Right.
It's the power of TV editing.
Yeah, so do your homework, get it checked out, avoid getting caught in the money pit.
Thing number 3, bring somebody you trust. So maybe Dad will object to me characterizing it this way, but a buyer's agent is free to the buyer because in the state of Wisconsin, most listing agents incentivize a buyer's agent by splitting the commission that listing agent is going to receive from selling that house. And so to a buyer, if you're just out there looking for a house in, Shorewood or Wauwatosa, you can bring somebody with you that you trust who's sitting on your side of the table for free because the seller is the one who's paying for that buyer's agent to be negotiating on your behalf. So number 3, bring someone you trust. Jerry, number 4.
Right. Even if it's a non-industry professional. Maybe you got a neighbor who's selling your house. Find somebody you trust.
A second set of eyes.
Yeah, exactly. Watch for costs. And this seems obvious, but as we'll talk about a little bit later too, not so much for a lot of consumers. Be sure your budget includes or accounts for things like not only the standard closing costs, but there's going to be an escrow deposit for taxes and insurance, a first year's homeowner's insurance premium, and potentially association fees if you're buying in within a homeowners association.
My example of this, I had a nice lady who got an accepted offer on a house and proceeded to have to spend $1,200 on inspections and expert inspections to get out of the transaction because it turns out something was wrong with the basement. So there are costs in addition to down payment for buying a house.
And it's an interesting segue, David. Take the next...
Come on, number 5. I didn't even do that on purpose. Number 5, do all the inspections. You want to make sure that you're not buying a lemon. You want to make sure that the health of the house is good, because once it's yours, it's your problem. So you want to make sure that the roof's not caving in, that the basement's not bowing. And so take the time to make sure that that house is in good health and spend the money. No one's ever upset when they spend money on an inspection to either find or fix something. You will kick yourself if you ignore it and it comes up later.
Worst case, it provides peace of mind, which is priceless.
Right. There you go.
And then finally, before we have to run to break here, check out the neighborhood. You don't have a lot of control over your neighbors. Do your research.
In fact, zero control.
That's right. Make sure you're going to love that place. I had read another article recently that recommended visiting the neighborhood in the morning, in the evening, on the weekends.
Drive around.
Maybe drive and make your commute to work.
See if you like that commute.
Exactly. So I think we've got to head to break. We got the rate roundup coming up. Lots more to cover when we come back.
Right here on the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Hour. It's now 10:30 on this Sunday morning as we welcome in from the WTMJ 24-hour newsroom, Colleen Bolin.
Thank you, Steve.
Find a place to call home without the headache. This is the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
And we're at a time in the show when we take a look at the rate roundup.
Yeah, you bet. All right, so at the close of business on Friday, every week, Freddie Mac, one of the two government-sponsored entities who securitize mortgages here in America, ended the week upon their survey at an average rate of 4.23% with an average of half a point. So a half a point for those playing at home on a $200,000 house $200,000 loan is 1,000 American dollars. And that's down a little bit. And again, amazingly, after the Fed raised their rates last week, rates came back a little bit. So again, anybody who claims they know what's going to happen with interest rates is fibbing. So, Jerry, where did Accunet end up the week? I always love this because we get to do better than the industry average, at least according to Freddie Mac.
Exactly, and even a bit more so than normal this week. Accunet ended up at 4.125 versus the 4.23 Freddie weekly surveyed rate, and not only that, no points, David, associated with that, and total costs under $1,000.
Wait, so you're saying I could get an eighth better and keep $1,000 in my pocket?
That's
pretty
saying.
Good. Okay,
That's what we're saying.
That's all good.
It is. And listen, 20-year fixed back under 4%.
That 3-handle, very attractive.
That's right. So, rate that starts with a 3.875, APR 3.894. Again, no points. No points on any of these rates, as a matter of fact, David. I'm going to say that one more time.
Nice.
No points. The 15-year fixed all the way down to 3.375 with a 3.399 APR. And then we'll cover these ARM rates real briefly again because they have become a little bit more in favor.
Sure.
With fixed rates.
It depends what your plan is. If you think you're going to not be where you are, and it might make sense.
Right. And when you look at the difference now from a 30-year fixed at 4.125 to the 7-year ARM, it's a 5/8 of a point interest rate spread. So you can get that 7-year ARM, no points, at 3.5% with a 3.779 APR. The 5-year ARM down, actually, that was the same. So take the 5-year off the table, take the 7 at 3.5.
Yeah.
Get the 2 years of extra fixed rate protection.
Awesome. I've enjoyed here during basketball season, bracket season, one might say, watching the nation's largest online lender advertise the snot out of themselves, and I always get to say to anyone who I'm on the phone with, someone's got to pay for that expensive commercial for bracket time. So it turns out to be you, just in that example on cost. All right, so the Grand Poobah himself, El Jefe, Dad is listening to the show and texted me, the man cannot rest, and he wanted me to do the math on our earlier segment talking about, hey, what if you do get into a bidding war or, pay above asking price? What does that mean in real dollars so that we're not spooking people away? So I did the math, cracked open my Excel spreadsheet, and I've got the results. So let's say you were originally writing an offer on a $200,000 house. My general payment on that was going to be a payment including taxes and insurance of somewhere around $1,346. But hey, what if you were writing an offer and you had to offer above purchase price? Let's say that $200,000 house, you actually got that fish on the line for $210,000. Jerry, I want just shot in the dark. What do you think the difference in the payment is in that $10,000 difference? I won't let you hang out there for too long.
Well, we know for every $1,000, generally the payment is going to move about $4 to $5 per month. So I'm going to say it's pretty close.
$93 a month.
Okay.
And so $93 a month, and the difference in the amount of cash that you got to bring to closing is a whopping $501. So, again, it's not the end of the world. Dad, I hope you enjoyed that math. It's not the end of the world if you pay a premium for a house that you want. And in terms of real dollars, 93 is, 3 trips to Chipotle that you really didn't need. I don't know how expensive. Maybe it's not that expensive. But what I'm trying to articulate is that let's not over-focus on the purchase price if you think the house is worth it and you are comfortable with the difference in the payment. All right. When we come back from this next break, I want to tell a quick story about the nominal difference between credit scores. And just like we did with if you're buying a house a little bit over that asking price, what that means in real dollars, Steve, when we come back.
Right here on the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show. And if you have a question, you can call it or text it in on the Accunet Talk and Text line, 414-799-1620.
Helping you find a place to call home. This is the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
Well, the Potawatomi are known for their hotel and casino in the Menominee Falls Valley, but the tribe has many other business interests as well. Michelle Richards sits down with the Forest County Potawatomi Attorney General on this week's edition of WTMJ Conversations. That show is coming up here at 11:07 this morning. We have Marie joining us this morning here on the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show out of Milwaukee with a question for Jerry Serkatich and David Wickert. Good morning, Marie.
Good morning.
Good morning, Marie.
Good morning. I have a question regarding a second home purchase that eventually we would like to turn into a snowbird situation or possibly even full-time living in Florida. But we have money and resources now, and we're trying to figure out the best criteria or resources to use for deciding if we should purchase something here in the Milwaukee area and use it for rental income, or go ahead and purchase something in Florida where I believe that there's a higher rate of investment in renters to be able to kind of build that growth so we can purchase something that we would like down the road.
Well, great question. First off, thanks for calling, and really that's a great question. There's a lot in personal preference is going to come into this in terms of what you decide to do. But if your goal is to buy a property and move at some point, relocate to a warmer climate, then you may want to really consider purchasing something now in that climate that you're hoping to eventually get down to. Because, number one, that market right now is doing very well. Also, like we're seeing here, there's inventory shortage. Prices are only going up. So to get something now at these prices and these rates may be a good time to do that. Secondly, the rental aspect of it, you can do more seasonal renting sometimes during those those peak seasons, you can leverage a much higher rent. And not only that, but then you may be able to test that out and get down there for a week or a long weekend and use it yourself while it's not being rented out. So that, I think, is a consideration, too, as you think about, making that transition. Does that help?
It absolutely does. Could I ask one more question?
Oh, absolutely.
At what point, I guess, being such a novice, wondering where you would account for HOA fees or cleaning services if it's rented out, who are the best resources to use if it is an out-of-state purchase? Would it be a realty office? Would it be a third party that would help?
Yeah, I think a real estate company or agency that would be involved in helping market that property would I think be useful. I think the association itself, in many cases, will have some resources. So yeah, we would love to spend more time actually helping you through this process, and not only that, but helping relative to the preliminary approval and trying to help position you for that purchase relative to down payment requirement, things like that. So if you want to leave some information with Ben off the air, we'd be happy to give you a call later today or sometime this coming week.
The other commentary, Jerry, that I would give is on if it does qualify as a second home. So two quick things. One, the down payment requirement on a second home is 10%. So on a $300,000 house, that's a $30,000 down payment. But then the other nice thing about a second home is that the interest rates are priced the same as a primary residence. I pulled it up on our pricing tool, and there's no difference between the interest rate that we would, if you had to classify it as your primary home, there's no difference between that and if we were qualifying or categorizing that house as a second home. So you're not being penalized, I'm going to say.
Penalized, if you will. Yeah.
If it does qualify as your second home, it's just because it's going to get classified as a second home, the lending world says, we'd like you to have a little bit more skin in the game, if only because, again, it's a measurement of risk. When it's not the place you're sleeping at night, you're probably more likely to stop paying on that before you stop paying on the place where you're laying down to rest at night with your sleeping partner, as we heard on the earlier spot here on TMJ.
Right. That and just as an aside then, if it does need to be classified as an investment, typically the interest rate, in order to maintain the same level of closing costs, is going to be about a 0.5 percentage point higher than that of a primary residence classification or second home, as you mentioned. The down payment requirement, of course, would increase as well.
Right.
So just things to consider and things that we'll cover with you off the air.
All good. Steve, when we come back from this next break, I'm going to dive into the real-world difference between credit scores when you're buying a house when we come back.
Right here on the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on 620 WTMJ.
Don't just find a house, find your home. Here's more of the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
And David Wickert now has some real-world examples of credit scores and how they're used.
Yeah, you bet. So I took a call this week from a friend who, speaking of inventory, Jerry, so this friend is going to be listing their current Brookfield home for sale in the $200,000 range. Nice house, good, nice neighborhood. And so I said, hey, friend, between you, me, and the fence post, inventory is thin enough that I'm guessing you're going to have multiple offers in a day or two.
Especially at that price point.
Yeah, especially in that price point. So you kind of you got to be ready for where you're going to go next, because otherwise you're going to be living in a motel after you sell your Brookfield house for a nice price. But anyway, what we dove into on the rock solid pre-approval side, in that theme of reducing stress, was a conversation about credit scores. So in this example, their qualifying credit score, this is a $420,000 purchase with 20% down. So their qualifying credit score is 728. And at Accunet, and I think most lenders, we get to use, you have 3 credit scores. We get to use your middle score, and then whomever, if there are 2 of you, whomever has the lower middle score. So in this example, that qualifying credit score was 728. And the best interest rates are available at a qualifying credit score of 740 and above. And what irked this buyer, this borrower, was that they were getting dinged on their credit report for a late payment last year on a credit card that they didn't use. They got signed up, for $10 a month for, credit protection on a card that they never used. And so, when they saw that they had this, $10 balance, they paid it off. And then shortly thereafter, they closed the account. And so what that did was ding their credit a little bit down to that 728 level. And they're used to being at, maybe like a 780 or 790 level. And so what I did in terms of putting it in real life, real dollar examples, on their $420,000 purchase, they could get the same interest rate at 4.125% with zero closing costs, and the APR is the same, whether their credit score was 740 or 728. So even though they had that, little bit of something, right, the real world impact wasn't anything. And then just if they were looking for that trophy rate at 3.99%, they'd have to pay a little bit in points. But in terms of real dollars, the difference between that 728 credit score and 740 was $650. And it's because when you're at that 728, the lending world, if you're paying points, says, I'm going to give you that 3.99, but I want a little bit of money up front because I'm going to make less on your loan over the life of your loan. So
importantly, though, too, David, just to say, they even though their score was below that 740 threshold, the good news is they were still in kind of that next tier, 720 to 739.
Yes.
So they were lucky in that regard.
Correct.
Those that fall then between 7 to 719, 700 to 719, or even then below that, it does become more and more costly.
Absolutely. Either
as it relates to interest rate and or costs. So it just highlights the importance of those credit scores.
Well, and I think what we try to do is, it stings a little bit when you're used to having rock star credit. But I think what our loan consultants do is try to frame it in real world. What does this actually mean? And actually, so we've got a cool tool at Accunet that I was able to use, the what if simulator. So we can go in and say, hey, what if you did X, or what if you did Y or Z? And in this example, actually, my colleague Drew helped me out. This borrower, and none of this is guaranteed, but the formula that the credit bureaus use would lead us to believe that, hey, if this borrower went and opened up a new credit card with a limit of like $3,000, that would actually help their credit score and could possibly, no guarantee, raise their score back above 740. Because you're adding a trade line that reports that, like, hey, you're doing a great job at borrowing money and paying it back on time. So it's just, again, one of many tools at Accunet Mortgage for making sure that we're having a conversation about real life and how to either take advantage of maybe improving things or just putting into real dollars what's the difference between what we expected and what reality might be.
And importantly, in that case where they were able to, or at least the simulator indicated that score would increase by opening the new revolving account, credit card account. Correct. Importantly, it was a zero balance account.
Correct.
So in addition to having a new account, your available credit increased, which is a real factor as it relates to the credit scoring models.
Yeah, you bet. Steve, that's all the time that we've got for this week. So again, our themes, we got a little relief on rates. So if you're looking to tap into some of that equity in your house for a kitchen remodel or combining your first and second mortgage together, all you got to do is click on the blue button at Accunet.com. That's ACCUNET.com. We'll see you next week, Steve.
Thanks,
right
Steve.
Here on the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show. We'll check in with Colleen Boland from the WTMJ 24-hour newsroom next.
The preceding was a paid program. Advice and opinions expressed during the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show are solely that of the hosts or guests of Accunet Mortgage and Accunet Realty Advisors and not WTMJ Radio or Scripps Media Incorporated.